Yes,
Check
indeed.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Answer is
5,
no.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
We're on the air.
All right, good evening. I would like to call this Board of Selectmen meeting on January 12th, 2023 to order at 6:01 PM. Second order of business would be to approve the December 22nd, 2022 Selectmen meeting minutes.
So moved.
All in favor? Motion passes. Item 3 would be the public forum. This is an opportunity for anyone who wishes to address the board this evening with anything that is not currently on this evening's agenda. Have anyone in the audience? Anybody at home?
We have 2 participants, no hands raised.
All right, very good. Moving on, I'm going to, as my prerogative as chairman, I am going to change the order of our agenda this evening. We have some gentlemen here this evening who would like to speak to us about a street opening permit on South Main Street. And since we have a lot of kind of, I won't say dry because they're friends of mine, but we have a lot of business to take care of tonight that will take us some time. I'd like to move it up so you don't have to sit here through the entire process.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, who wishes to speak to this from the town? I understand we have a street opening.
Yeah, why
Chris?
don't we have Kristen Mione, our Public Works Director, give an overview?
Good evening. So if you remember from the last meeting, we had this application submitted. They're requesting a street opening on South Main Street for a new water main to go down Woodland Drive. The issue is that we had just paved the road on September 28th. We did send out a mailing on August 2nd to the homeowners' addresses as we had them. We did not get a response from anybody, actually, that the mailings were sent out to. Road was paved, so we're at a point now where, our ordinance is in effect. The road's under moratorium by ordinance. State law does provide for a repair of the road if you do decide to issue a permit to open the street under moratorium. And that's basically the standards that I set forth in the previous memo. So,
All right. Before I invite the applicants up, does any of the board members have any questions for Chris?
I do still. Are you okay now with the wording on the bond?
I am.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Would you like to come and speak about your opening, why you think the town of Kennebunkport should break its moratorium?
Yeah, the letter should have gone to me. It was addressed to an address in Yarmouth. And I have a file of every single piece of paper that the town has sent me. I never received that letter.
Why did it go to Yarmouth?
Because that's where the corporation is, the LLC, yeah,
So the corporation owns the property,
correct,
so therefore, it's the corporation's responsibility to respond.
correct.
But you are the corporation.
Well, I'm one of them, yes. I would be the representative. So I never received that, and I mean, I went through it again, looking through my file to see everything. I've got letters. Initially, the town had sent me something that the address was on a different matter, where we did open the road, by the way, after it was paved. The town gave me a letter that the address was 15, and then they changed it to 10. I've got all those documents. I don't have this document.
There's no other person up in the office in Scarborough that would have opened it?
Yarmouth.
I mean Yarmouth?
No. It's my private residence, so it would have been me.
And you never checked your mail?
No, I checked my mail. I never received it.
You didn't receive it in Yarmouth
Correct. I never received it, period.
at all?
Yes. I mean, there would have been no reason, we were talking about this for several months. There would have been no reason for me to have ignored that, because this was an important issue.
Right.
You've received other mail from the town at that?
I
time?
have,
Yeah.
yes.
And recently?
Yeah, not recently. I mean, I don't know if the last thing was sent out, but I don't remember anything recently. But I've received the things, for instance, for the beaches, that you have to get permits for the beaches, or, stickers or whatever it is. I get all that stuff.
Yeah, standard, yeah. So your address is definitely the address of record in the town?
I don't know if they have it down there or not, but I believe, because I saw that there was a letter, but the letter didn't have an address on it. When I asked for a copy of the letter, it didn't have an address on it. It was just like a blank pro forma letter.
Right.
I'm not sure whether you have the correct address or not. I'm assuming that you do.
I'm assuming that the letter was probably, formatted in that way because it went to several residences.
I imagine, but I assume that the address that you have is correct, because I've been receiving everything else.
It should be the same database that the beach sticker notification.
Yes.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
It's not a different database that's used, is it, for these, or? No. Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know if this is the proper time to bring it up, but we did do some drilling to see what the water would be like. And it turns out that the water is going to be brackish. It would not be if I were to drill a well. And then on top of it, what we had planned to do was to put, according to what the fire department asked us to do, was to put in hydrants along those roads, which we were going to accomplish with using town water. And obviously, if we can't cut in there, I don't know what we'll do. And I will state again that we did this on another project on Slack Tide Road, and we did have to cut into the road that was newly paved. We got permission to do it, and these gentlemen, took care of that, and they repaved it, and whatever needs to be done after a certain time, we will be doing to make sure that the road is fine.
What was the reason that you needed to cut into newly paved road there?
Same thing.
You had not received notice, and therefore you,
I don't remember the details of that. I don't know if there was any notice, but it was cut in for water purposes, for town water purposes. I don't remember the details.
And that's a state road, that may be
Ah,
treated
thank you.
differently.
Thank you.
That's Route 9.
got it.
Yeah. But I wouldn't hold that up as an example because I drive by that, regularly and it's sinking into the ground. And I think it's a perfect example of why we don't, that's a state road that was beyond
Right.
our control or beyond our purview to say yay or nay to. But
Sure.
that's a perfect example of why we don't cut into new roads.
But in the meantime, there's going to be something done in the spring to check that, to level that out.
But
So-
it will never be new again. Once
No,
you
it
cut
will
into
never-
a
no,
road, it will never
absolutely
be
not.
the same.
Right, we're
Yeah.
talking about a small section of the road, but yes, you're
Yes.
correct.
Yeah. Does the board have any questions?
I'm not happy about cutting into a brand new piece of pavement.
No.
It's just, it's so, these roads today are so expensive, and that's why we have a moratorium, so we don't get all chewed up by people wanting to go ahead and cut into the road, because once you cut into the road, no matter what you do, you're gonna have a bump usually, even after you've gone back in the spring and we have redone that, and we probably won't pave that road for another 10 years again. So we'll always have that. That's how I'm looking at it.
Okay?
That's just me.
Sheila, do you?
May I add to this
Absolutely.
comment? Do you mind, Chris?
Please.
So I'm Jack with Woods. I'm representing the contract that would actually be doing the work. Every town's a little bit different, so what you're referring to on Slack Tide, I agree. It's just a trench, 6 feet wide plus or minus, to get to the other side to bring the water on all the way across the road. State requirement there was to do nothing more, fill it back in, match the thickness of the pavement that existed, and that's kind of our obligations at the state level on that road. On this road here, and I have the documents, I think you guys might already have it, for the bond for the road. Kennebunk has a standard $2,000, call it reclamation bond for the road. I believe it was you that had said, let's bump that up, so we bumped it up to $7,500 as a bond. And the difference is, on this project, is it's what we call the short side of the road. So we're not going all the way across the street. We're probably gonna go 6 to 8 feet from the edge of the private road into your main street. Gonna fill it back in when we're done. We're gonna patch it over. And then part of the contract for us, and part of the reason the bond is so much higher, is now, in 1 year, I believe the term was, we are obligated to come back from that center of that trench. If we have a 6-foot wide trench, 5 feet in, it has been asked of us to go from that point, center of that trench, 25 feet left, 25 feet right, all the way across full width of road. We have to mill that down and put all new surface for 50-foot stretch, full width of the road, just so we can cut in that 6 feet to give this gentleman water for his lots. So there is a big difference between Slack Tide and this project because of that. It's not, just to throw it out there, South Portland, our only obligation is to fill it in with base pavement, and you pay a fee, and they come back and fix it themselves. So every town's different. So with Chris's recommendation, and I have a copy of the bond if anybody wants to see the verbiage or whatnot, I'll be more than happy to pass it out. Does anybody not have?
We have it.
You do have, okay. So that's what I'd like to speak on that. If there's any more questions that you have for me on that, I'll be happy to answer them. If not, I wanted to throw in one other piece of information.
We are familiar as a board with that because on other other roads that we're not under moratorium, that has been our requirement of others.
Okay.
So we are familiar, but I'm not sure that what the success rate has been on that as far as, the road's integrity after milling to 50 feet.
Okay.
But-
Can Chris address that? I mean, how successful has that been, Chris?
At least in the places that we've done it, it's been fairly successful. The downside is you're going to have two seams. That seams that didn't exist before. So you're going to have a seam on either end
Yeah.
of what's paved. You try to mill it the 1.5 inch and place the 1.5 inch back in and compact it so that it's the transition seamless, but ultimately that transition may show up.
Yeah, it's a seam, but.
Yeah.
Well, my question was to Chris too, is, are you okay with this?
So, again, the state allows for the repair of a road on the moratorium. It's about the best repair that you're going to get. So I would much rather see this in simply a trench that's based back in, at least here. That gives time for that trench to settle out. They'll come back, mill that so that they can put that 1.5 inch of finished pavement back in. It's about the best repair that you're going to get.
So is that you saying you're okay with it?
I am okay with it.
So what would happen, say, 2 years from now, and it sunk? Who'd be liable for that? Would we be liable for that, or would they?
Well, ultimately, we would probably end up having to take care of it.
I would remind the board that we do have a moratorium for a reason, and that, this is in our ordinance, because we are trying to protect, valuable town infrastructure. And as we're gonna find out tonight when we do the CIP, the cost of paving roads, I don't even really need to tell you this, but has gone up tremendously in the past couple of years.
That's because of oil.
But,
Yeah, my biggest concern is setting a precedent. I don't know what
Yeah,
this
well,
means for the
I'm
next
with you
time
there.
around. So that's
I'm with you there.
my
You
only
either-
concern on this.
my take on this is you either have a moratorium or you don't. If we grant this, then I consider that we no longer have a moratorium and that we should remove it in the future.
May I add one more thing while everybody's kind of mulling things over?
Absolutely.
For the customer, obviously drilling wells from a financial standpoint is way less expensive than putting in the public water, so to speak. We had a couple well people come out, and this is kind of, let me just pass these out real quick, and I'll continue.
Thank you.
Watch the cord, you see it. Yeah.
I guess you can get one.
I could share. I can share. Okay, I'll share.
If not, I can give you another one. So the reason that this kind of has, we don't want to just not drill a well, nobody, it's not they don't want a well house in their property or anything like that. What it is because it's on the peninsula, the well driller is saying that he's having bad luck with drilling the wells in the salt water like that, having a pool, having irrigation. What it does is it drafts out and drains out the fresh water, and of course, little by little, it starts to seep back in with the seawater. The obvious thing is, well, let's just treat it. So the system itself, just to treat it, is roughly between $25,000 and $35,000 for the system that you would have to treat to go on top of the well, with about a yearly average of about $5,000 a year just in maintenance and supplies for that system. And it would still probably have trouble keeping up with irrigation needs and stuff like that in the fresh water.
How deep did they say they were gonna drill this well?
What's that?
How deep did they say they were gonna drill this well?
Honestly, it's like any well. Nobody truly knows. It depends on, they could go 100 feet and get 30 gallons a minute. They could go 700 feet and have to frack because they couldn't find any. He didn't do the actual study, or I shouldn't say he didn't do it. He didn't give me the results of the actual study of what's around in the area for wells that are working.
So basically, this is really an incomplete document because this is based on speculation. There's no facts here. This is this man's opinion. I understand he drills wells, but there are many wells in town. My father has one that's almost a 600 feet deep, and it's quite close to the ocean, and his water is not brackish. Now, that doesn't mean that that is going to be the case there, but, you know, that this is simply speculation. This is not proof of anything in concrete terms. That's simply one person's opinion. And I would
Duly
certainly,
noted.
I agree.
Duly noted. I
I would like to see
just-
this hooked up to the town water supply too. I think that is the appropriate thing.
Yep.
However, you know, given the ordinances and the rules that this board is governed by, you know, the decision that we make this evening has to be, in my opinion, governed by those rules. And we will find out soon enough what the board's opinion is on this. And, you know, we paved a lot of roads this year, a lot of big roads, and I noticed that in many other cases, the roads were prepped in advance by property owners to accommodate for this, either put stubs in, or in certain cases, they put a, what do you call that, a abutment out, so that when, you know, they could put a culvert under it and put a road across it, et cetera, in preparation for future plans that they may have, so that they wouldn't disturb the roadbed. And I personally, I'm not sure that you know, again, the buying of, I didn't get the letter, you know, I find that to be a thin excuse here. I mean, you guys have been doing a lot of due diligence. Somebody had to know. I mean, you owned two very expensive pieces of property, or one very expensive piece of property that you wish to subdivide.
No, go ahead.
No, please speak. I mean, that's between you guys. I mean, I know you don't, you're not the owner of the property, but you have every right to speak here.
Yep, so hi, my name's Chris Woods. I'm the owner of the excavating company working with the developers for the project. So we spent a lot of years working with them in different instances. We've gone in the road to get water. So this particular situation, I just wanted to point out a few details leading up to now. I definitely understand the town's budget and the obligation to look out for the taxpayers with the road. Sometimes in a situation like this, we have to look at what led up to it and where we're at now. I know that there's a precedence that needs to be set. We definitely do have an issue where we don't have record of the notification. And I understand that if you guys don't have certified mail, it's hard for you guys or us to go further than that.
You're talking about hundreds of letters, and that's why we
right.
don't.
So the ethics of what we're doing, I just want to point out, are that we are in a situation where we've ordered the pipe. There's been a pipe shortage. We had to put our name on the pipe for this project, and we were dealing with a blaster schedule. We've already blasted for a lot of this stuff that was preliminary for the water. And with the, you know, we're not well drillers, but with the opinion of what we have, there's going to be definitely a lot of expense that's put into it already, and a lot of hardship caused by not running the water. So what we knew best was to talk to engineers and talk to other towns and states about what to do in this type of instance, what was the best practices of, say, another town or, you know, the state. And we understand that you guys are your own town with some of your own rules. We want to respect that. But the best thing that we knew to come to you guys with tonight was, if we truly had a notification, our ethics are not that we would ignore it. We would never have the intention to put something in. We have been dealing with the water district for months now with different plans and reviews. We've ordered the pipe and we've blasted, so it definitely shows that if we knew there was an issue, we wouldn't have wanted to not have that. If you guys are worried about an example of letting us go in the street for future precedences, I would maybe urge the suggestion that switching to certified mail might switch something with that, and then also maybe a communication between the water district and you guys. If there was something the water district had in the works, like this situation, and you guys are going to pave that road, maybe something could be required to be reviewed. And honestly, I'm not on the town, and it's not up to me to decide that, but we're more than willing to do anything that would be acceptable in the street. We definitely, as you know, we don't own the land, we're the contractors, but we've got our money invested in this pipe, so we're not really sure where to go from here. And we also are performing the work in the road, so the only thing we can guarantee is our repair on the road and the work we do. But we're open to ideas. We understand the taxpayer money, and we also understand that you guys have to set a precedence. But I guess what we're hoping to do is maybe,
I was
Yep.
going to say, according to this bond, they have 1 year to look at the road. Can we extend that? Can we extend the year? Can it be 5 years?
It can be.
Because we can't, you know, the ordinance says 5 years, you can't cut in. Maybe they become responsible for the road for 5 years.
I think that's a possibility, if that's what you'd like to do.
so we're not the developers, we're the earthwork contractor, and we're willing to own that trench patch for 5 years. I think it would be smart that we milled it and paved it 1 year after. But if there was an issue, we would work with you guys. We intend to continue working in the area. We want a good reputation. We've got, you know, work that we want to keep doing, so we
We
don't.
also don't want to prevent somebody from moving into their own home.
Right,
kind of
so
thing.
I
But it's our responsibility to be responsible to the taxpayer.
And I totally understand that, so we see that. We don't want to have the impression that we are trying to bull through some type of pipe and not communicate or regard to anyone. And I think that if we hadn't been this far, I think that it would show that maybe we were trying to do something, but to be this far, I think shows that we, you know, we definitely wouldn't have bought pipe and done what we've done if we had any bad intent. So I guess whatever modifications to the road that you guys have in mind, we would love to work with you, so. But the best we knew to come to you with is what the state or other towns or an engineer that we've talked to had recommended, you know, on the 25 feet on each side with a milling, so.
Okay. We have somebody in the Zoom audience. Is it okay? I'm going to take Dave. Dave, you want to put him up, please?
Yes.
Yeah.
My name's Duncan McDougal, and I'm the builder, general contractor that's been hired by the LLC that owns the property. And I've been working extensively with Kennebunkport Wells Water District and the town planner and the code office and the engineer that has designed the entire water system. It took, I think, 2.5 to 3 months for him to do that work. And not once during any of my conversations with Werner or Janie, the engineer at the water district, did anyone ever mention to us that this road was going to be paved. So that's why we had continued to move forward with this in, you know, hoping that we were going to be able to do this without knowing that you know, we would have put a stub in or something had we known. And then also with the slack tide property on Mills Road, we will, at the 1 year mark, be doing the 25-foot milling in each direction and, you know, repaving as suggested by the town and the state. So we're hoping that will work here as well.
Thank you. I don't believe that, you know, aside from the promulgation of sending out the letters, that it is the town's responsibility to speak to every contractor and tell them our road schedule, because that would become quite onerous. We have several miles of roads. And, you know, it is, if you wish to develop the property, and I'm speaking to Duncan in particular, you know, you have to do your due diligence and ask questions like this. You know, ask about contingencies. Is there anything going on we should know about? You know, that's a good one. But to that end, you know, I don't wish to drag this out any longer. Are there any more questions on the board?
Yeah, my concern again is one of precedent.
Mine as well.
I would like to support this. I was thinking perhaps we levy a fine. We do something that creates a pain point that someone, because I do agree, saying you didn't receive the letter, it's just not a solid enough excuse. I appreciate your thought that you have invested in this, and why would you? I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you, but at any rate, but then again, Sheila's thought that if they were willing to have a bond to a level that would allow it to be resurfaced 2 more times if it needed to be, over the course of the 5 years, then perhaps that would be equivalent in my mind to levying a monetary fine. But something that would put a stake in the ground to say this, we're not going to allow a precedent that will just open any road when someone doesn't receive a letter.
So this is your slippery slope right here, because
Yeah.
we have faced this before. And if, to that end, and I know you're new here, but I know you're a real fast learner, because I've had the pleasure to work with you on a lot of things. And that's really where I see this as well, John, is this is a precedent, and,
Well, maybe what we do is extend the 5-year bond, the bond for 5 years. And then, as a board, come up with a monetary penalty in the future for anybody wanting to cut into a road.
But why do we have a
Well, I don't
regulation
know.
on it?
No,
I just think that if we
I
have
understand what
a
it is.
resident.
Yeah.
No, I understand that. But
I do too, but, we're not lawyers and we're not judges, but, I try to look at when I make decisions personally, I try to look at our ordinances and say, what does the ordinance say, and use that as my guide, because otherwise I'm just here making decisions based on a whim. And my ordinance, or the town's ordinance, say that there is a moratorium and the road is not to be cut into for 5 years. Believe me, I own my own business. I sympathize with you in that respect.
Okay.
But then when you come to try to go against that moratorium, there needs to be a price to pay that then would allow that to occur. I think, I just think it's a little draconian to just say it's black and white. So I'd hope there's some shade of gray, but what's the level of pain that protects the principle of the moratorium, but doesn't shut down, especially if someone has an investment in it already. So I want to find a little bit of a ground somewhere.
Sure.
Do you think I could?
You're awful quiet down there.
Well, I agree with what John says. Look, this is a he said, she said thing, okay? So I don't know who's right or who's wrong, but it seems to me there ought to be some way that we can work out some kind of a compromise of some sort, and without setting a precedent. And I think what John is saying is probably one of the ways that we could go about it. I think what Sheila says is another way that we could go about it. So, I always try to look for compromise in things that come up. We did that with the landscapers and with I think that we've already set a precedent that we could do, that we can take a look at things and make an informed and a compromise of some sort. So I agree both with, there's a way that we could do it that Sheila says, there's a way that we could do it that John says. So maybe it's a combination of the both. We go out 5 years and we have some kind of a monetary fine for this. It just seems to me that compromise is not a sign of weakness. It's just, what are we going to do, And I sympathize with these guys, and I went through dealing a well when I was trying to sell a place, and I was right on the water. And brackish water, we ended up having to get down about 500 feet to get water that we could use. So I understand.
I don't see how we would be able to find these people for this, because we've never.
No, I don't think we have the authority to fine them. They haven't done anything wrong. I mean, if we allow them to cut, if we allow them to cut in, then we've done wrong.
No,
You're
it's a
incorrect.
price. It's a price
That's right.
that needs to be paid in order to allow for a release to the moratorium. I think that's what one couldn't buy into it, but it needs to be painful enough that people just don't do it in a trivial way.
But if we do it that way, what about the guy who's,
Well, why not now?
John, what
Why
about
does it
the?
have to be future?
Well,
I hear you. First, the problem with that is I don't think we have the authority
We do have the authority to do it.
We do?
Yes,
Okay.
we do.
But what about, I mean, this gentleman's doing well. I've seen the house they built. It's right behind one of the properties I just sold in town. It's a beautiful house. They want a lot of money for it. You know, they're successful. But what about the person who inherits a piece of property from a family member and they're just getting started in life and they don't have the money to pay? So what we're saying is if you're wealthy, you can cut into the road. If you're not, you can't.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah,
I
and
hear what
I
you're
know what you mean, John. I'm not coming down on you. I think that your heart is in the right place. But I'm more inclined, if I am to support this, with Sheila's method of we just say, all right, this road goes to hell in 5 years, it's on you.
All right, all right.
I'm
But-
good
And I
with
think
that.
they're
All
okay
right.
with that.
Well, let's make sure the bond is
So-
at a sufficient number that we can do it 2 more times.
Yeah.
Would that be a good number, 2 more times on
Why,
it?
why are you
Yeah.
putting a number? It has to be done. If it starts to
Yeah,
fall
but if
in.
there's
We
not.
have to put a number
You gotta
'cause it's
put
a
a number,
bond.
it's gotta be bonded.
Could I add a
As you're-
proposition?
You're counting on them to.
When they're
what am I
done,
missing?
you can,
Go
absolutely.
ahead.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yes, sir.
You have to add
Oh, yeah, I
that.
think you need to add.
Maybe.
You gotta have some teeth.
So I understand,
Not a fund, it's not a fund. They don't spend it if it doesn't.
All right.
Okay.
I'm not sure on the technicalities of when I'm supposed to speak. I know I'm
No,
on
no,
the
that's
board,
okay.
but
Yeah, just
I
jump
do
in.
have a comment. So, a typical street entrance that we would figure for a job, we probably do, we're a small company, but we probably do about 5 a year. And what we typically would do is we would pay a restoration fee, and we would pave to the top. The town would either own it with a restoration fee, or we'd come back and mill it. The additional that we're already have mentioned, in addition to a normal, because it's been overlaid, is the bond, and I'd have to verify the number, I think it was 7,500. And then there's also the extra work that we'll pay a paver, and that would cover a 1 year. If you guys, it sounds like, I've heard a few mentions of owning it for 5 years and having enough money on the bond to ensure that if we didn't do it, you have the money. We also talked about pain tolerance. As a small business owner, there's a fair amount of that, but I do think that if we went on a 5-year basis and we doubled the bond to 15,000, if it was 7,500 to
Yeah.
15,000,
Yeah.
I think that would be definitely significantly higher than what we've ever seen in a moratorium situation. And I think that it would definitely get the point across that you guys are serious about your road. We are willing to do that.
Your responsibility. I think that would be your responsibility.
Well,
On the-
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Well, I guess at this point, we're willing to put our name on that in this situation. We wouldn't do it again. We would make sure that even if we had to call the town to check, we would, because we don't want to be in this spot ever again. But in this situation, we would be willing to do that, and from what I could compare to other situations, that would be over double the cost, which it would protect the taxpayers, and it would also, I think, steer people away from being in this situation, regardless of a certified letter. So it may be a situation that worked for the taxpayers to protect, it worked for deterring people to do it again, and it would also work for, holding the money to make sure that if it was a different contractor that didn't come back, that you'd have the money to
well
work with.
said, well said.
So,
How soon, Chris, do you think we can get a new bond written? Because I think the board, and again, I don't speak for the board, but from what I'm hearing here, it sounds like we are willing to go with the 5-year bond.
double bond.
Yes, but I think we'd like to see it.
We can get that immediately out of our bond company. So how,
We meet again in 2 weeks.
okay.
So you guys could authorize it tonight with
Yeah.
those
Yes.
contingent upon
Yeah.
that. We could then verify that, and you could come in and sign it as long as you've
Perfect.
taken the
Sure.
action tonight.
Okay.
How's that?
So do I have a,
So the motion is going
Yeah,
to,
we'll immediately call them in the morning. so.
Yeah.
Why don't you make the motion? I want to let them know.
Okay, so Chris just asked me about turning that around, and I said that we could call our bonding company tomorrow.
Okay.
It's my thought that they would have that to us pretty much immediately, maybe even tomorrow. Probably wouldn't want to guarantee anything since we're relying on them, but
At least
usually.
by the week,
Yep.
by next week.
Yep, by next week, for sure, yep. So if that was a condition, I'd be comfortable with holding up our end of that,
Good.
so.
we appreciate, and we want you to understand that this board, none of us here want to impede your progress. I think what you're doing and what you want to do is the correct thing. It's that, you know, we have certain protocols
Right.
and certain things that we must follow because we have to protect the taxpayers' interest. And I think that the 5-year bond will satisfy that.
Yep, no, I can respect your job too, so.
So let me make a motion then
Please.
that we
trying to look it up.
accept the request for a street opening permit by Woods Excavating on South Main to be Woodland Drive, under the condition that we receive a bond that would protect the resurfacing of the road for 5 years at a value of $15,000 with the assessment of the need to resurface made by the town.
And the fact that they're going to repave on 25 feet on either side.
And the fact that it
Mill.
would, yes, that it would do the current bond with a 25 feet principal.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and I have a second. All in favor? Good luck, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Good luck,
Yep,
guys.
thank you.
All right. Moving on, item number, well, we'll still call it 4, even though it's 5. The audit presentation by Casey Leonard of RKO for fiscal year 2022.
So Nicole, our finance director, will introduce Casey.
So back in October, we performed our fiscal year '22 audit, and it was a very good audit. Our expenditures were under budget and our revenues were over budget. And so tonight we have Casey Leonard here from RKO to do the audit presentation.
Hi there.
Hi.
Good evening.
So, yeah, the audit went very well this year. Big thank you to Nicole, big thank you to Laurie, to Denise Brown, who came in and kind of helped with the process as well. I put together a little presentation. It's up here on the screen. As I go through this, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to jump on in and ask those questions. So if we take a look at page 2, we have a summary of the audit results, so just kind of an overview of things. So we finished the audit in December. Reports were dated December 21st, 2022. So we've only been done with the audit for a few weeks at this point. In terms of the opinion on the financial statements, the town received an unmodified opinion, which means they are fairly stated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, or it was a clean opinion, which is what you want to see. In addition to the financial statement audit, we also performed an audit in accordance with government auditing standards. It's what we usually call a yellow book audit. So here we consider the town's internal controls over the financial reporting process. So we look at all the procedures that are in place that help to ensure that the year-end balances are materially correct. We also perform tests of the town's compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements. I'm glad to say we didn't have any material weaknesses, nor did we have any significant deficiencies. So a clean opinion on that compliance audit as well. The other thing that I want to mention before we get into some of the results for the year is that, again, in 2021, so the prior fiscal year, the town submitted their financial statements to the Governmental Financial Officers Association for participation in their ACFR program. ACFR stands for Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. And that submission received a Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting. There's probably 200 governments in the state of Maine that could participate in that program. There's usually about 20 that do, with Kennebunkport being one of them. And it really shows the town's strong commitment to financial reporting. So kudos to your staff for making that happen.
Is it 20 that do get excellence in the
Yes,
evaluation?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it is, yep. The 2022 financial statements have been submitted. Usually takes them about 6 to 9 months to actually go through the reports and get back to community or get back to government. So we won't hear about 22 for a while here. On graph 3, we start to get into some of the financial results for the year. So this first graph shows general fund balance. So if you take your total assets less your total liabilities and deferred inflows of resources, you're left with the equity position or the fund balance for the town. And we take fund balance and we kind of carve it up into different pieces. And I'm just going to briefly describe what's included in each one of those. So first of all, we have non-spendable fund balance. That represents resources that can't be spent. They're not in a spendable form. So specifically, we're talking about inventory and prepaid expenditures. Those can't be easily converted to cash, and so they're in that non-spendable category.
That's the very thin blue line on the top.
It is,
of the
yeah, it's
thing.
usually pretty small, yeah. Yeah, you can't really see it from here.
Yeah, right.
And then you have assigned and committed fund balance, and that represents resources with constraints by the town's intent to be used for specific purposes. So these are amounts that the board's setting aside, that the town is setting aside. And specifically, we're talking about $200,000 that was set aside to balance the 2023 budget, so the following year budget. It also included $735,000 set aside for carry forwards. And then unassigned fund balance is what's left over. It's the remainder after you kind of populate those other categories. In total, fund balance decreased by about $449,000 between 2021 and 2022. And we'll see some of the reasons why that happened on the next few graphs. On graph 4, we have a budget to actual comparison for the revenues for the general fund. In total, revenues were about $547,000 over budget, so you received more than what you were expecting. Some of the larger variances are mentioned here. Excise taxes exceeded budget by $112,000 due to conservative budgeting. It's always hard to figure out, who's buying those new cars and what you're going to get for excise taxes on an annual basis. Intergovernmental revenues are over budget by $125,000 due to greater than expected revenue sharing. The increase amount in revenue sharing was determined after the town had completed its budget, so that's why you're seeing that variance there. And licenses and permits revenue were over budget by about $248,000 due to greater than expected building permits issued, which is reflective of the aggressive building activity in town, and greater than expected short-term rental fees. I think that was a new revenue source for the town in 2022, so it was probably hard to figure out what to budget for that. The next graph has expenditures for the general fund, also budget to actual comparison. In total, expenditures were about $1.2 million under budget. Again, some of the larger variances are mentioned here. General government expenditures are under budget by about $402,000, primarily due to lower than expected costs related to administration, planning and development, and unneeded tax abatements or overlay. Public safety expenditures are under budget by $202,000, primarily due to vacancies in the police department. And committed funds are under budget by $497,000 as they are carried forward until they are expected or expended on their intended use. So obviously, we're making some kind of general, statements about a lot of this activity. We could drill down to any one of these and have a much longer conversation, but I just wanted to give you somewhat of a flavor of what happened during the fiscal year. Graph 6 has general fund unassigned fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. There's some language here about how the town has a policy to maintain 2 months' worth of expenditures, which equals 18%. Any unassigned funds in excess of 18% is transferred to the capital reserve account. I think you guys actually have a motion about this in a few minutes. Using the town's calculation, unassigned fund balance as a percentage of general fund expenditures for 2022 equaled 19.97%. I do apologize, my graph is, the staff that put this together actually rounded that up. It's 19.97% is the actual number. So obviously you exceeded the 18%. You'll be doing a transfer to your capital reserve fund. Just as an aside, we often, just kind of as a metric in our industry, look at unassigned fund balance as a percentage of budget. So as opposed to comparing to general fund expenditures, we look at the budget. And we generally recommend having greater than 2 months worth of expenditures, that 2-month amount. So if we were to do that, I didn't do that calculation here. If we were to do that calculation for the town, obviously you guys would exceed it. So financially, I think you guys are in pretty good shape. You also set amounts aside for your reserves. So, financially, I think you guys are in a pretty good position. Graph 7 has a revenue distribution for the general fund. So this schedule shows taxes and intergovernmental revenues. Together, they make up about 95% of all general fund revenues in 2022. Obviously, you know what property taxes and excise taxes are. Your intergovernmental revenues primarily represent state revenue sharing, but it also includes homestead reimbursements and COP share grant proceeds. We usually include these graphs to look for trends. There's not really a strong trend here. Property taxes and excise taxes, if you combine those have decreased as a portion of your total revenues by about 2%. Not much of a trend there. Intergovernmental revenues has increased a little bit by about 1%. I didn't include it in here, but your licenses and permits have increased. And that had to do with, as I was mentioning before, your building permits have increased. Your short-term rental licenses, those have increased. So that is kind of becoming a larger portion of your revenues as well. And then the final two graphs are just pie charts for your expenditures. So just a different graphical representation of your expenditures. If we look at 2022, the three largest categories were education at 47%, so the amounts that you send to RSU 21. Public safety was at about 12%, and general government was at about 9%. And then if we flip to 2021, pretty consistent between the years. Also pretty consistent with what I see for most of my clients. Whether you are part of a school unit or you have your own municipal school department, education is always a huge part of the pie. It's usually upwards of 50%, sometimes it's 60%, but not really much to point out in terms of looking at your expenditures.
Quick question, what are capital improvements? I thought that would be huge. So what does that mean? What is capital improvements in that pie graph?
I guess I would have to go back and take a look. I mean, you're spending capital amounts in special revenue funds too. So you're spending them in different places. This is just your general fund.
This is just a little bit that was taken from the general fund for capital?
Yeah.
Some of it might have been bonded as well, John. So it wouldn't necessarily have shown up here.
That's true as well.
Yeah, because that's not part of our general budget.
I think the difference that you're seeing too is he's got education and county in there. So when we look at a pie of our own, just municipal budget, the capital piece is bigger.
It's bigger, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah, that RSU will shrink up your side of the pie pretty quick.
Yeah, look at the size of it, yeah.
Were there any other questions related to the graphs or anything related to the audit?
No, I think
No, it
that's
looks
excellent, and
I
we're
got a
glad to.
couple.
Oh, Mike.
Just-
Sure.
But there may be some that I can ask Lori in private, but just, it'll be an education.
We're here. Go ahead.
It'll be an education policy. The current liabilities went up by $6 million this year.
In the general fund?
And overall, I'm looking at the balance sheet.
Okay.
So the current liabilities went up by $6 million.
Okay.
I understand now that I look over on page 44 that it's bond anticipation notes that are due on December 22nd, 2022. My question is that typical to put $6 million into a current liability for bond anticipation notes? 'Cause
That
it
would have
really
been our
looks like it's
wastewater bond.
Can you just tell me what page you're on?
44. Well,
44.
I can look at your balance sheet, and on page, I'm just trying to understand it, I'm not questioning, page 16.
Yep.
First of all, and then you've got, you look down at current liabilities, it goes from $63 last year to $6,117,000 this year, and all I'm asking is, I understand over on page 44, it says it's a revolving fund bond anticipation notes, one for $5 million and one for $1 million. I'm just trying to understand, when does that not become a current liability? I understand when you get the bond, I understand
Yeah.
all that stuff, but when do you get the bond? I mean, how long do we carry this and pay interest on it?
Yeah, that may be a question for Lori.
So one of the issues is that's our wastewater revolving loan fund from the state revolving loan fund. So what the state does through the main bond bank, when we go through that program, is they do the bond anticipation note themselves, and they won't let us close out until the project is 100% complete. Versus if we sell the bond, or we went to Maine Bond Bank ourselves and got a bond for a project, we would take on that bond and it would be complete before the project is complete.
Okay.
So it's that particular program that does it that way.
So it's nothing that the board is, because I was racking my brain trying to figure out if we had approved something like this last
It's just the
year.
wastewater bond, and because,
Oh,
you know,
it is.
we did the clarifiers, but we still have the pump stations. And so they will hold, so we signed some paperwork about a month ago, where the board signed some paperwork to extend that bond, because that timeline was coming up and we weren't done with the project yet. And so that's still considered a band or a bond anticipation note until they sign off on all of the project, and then they close out the bond.
Okay. So that would have happened already then?
Well, the original plan was we would be complete with the project by now.
Okay. That brings me a question I had on the wastewater statement. We have an operating loss at wastewater, okay? So my question, and it's mainly because of depreciation, it's non-cash thing. But I just have a question for the wastewater people. When we do our rates, do we consider the depreciation amount? Because one of the things that happens to us is we got ourselves in our fingers jammed in the door because we haven't been putting a lot of money away well, that's why we got a $6 million bond.
Yeah.
So we're not
Correct.
putting,
We're not budgeting depreciation.
but there's $450,000 a year in depreciation. Oh, no, last year.
Yes.
400 and something thousand dollars or whatever it was. And we had $1.2 million or something like that in revenue.
Yes.
Okay, and we lost money.
Yes.
So my only question is, is it legal for us to put, our rates should be including something for depreciation so that we develop some kind of a fund so that we can do the things that we need to, as you know, we need to do this stuff. So that's my question.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that's why the accounting is structured the way it is, because they do want you to fund depreciation for all the reasons you said. I think in the past, the town didn't fund depreciation because it was seen as a paper money versus a real need, instead focused on capital. I would say it's not unusual. I've seen in other municipal departments or districts to not fund depreciation. And then when you get yourself in the hole, you're climbing out by putting real money up, plus you're trying to fund depreciation, and usually people choose that. But I mean, our auditor, I certainly think he could give you his recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, that would seem to make sense to budget for that.
Casey, you gotta go to the mic.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, that would seem to make sense. I can't speak to sewer. I mean, I certainly have clients who have enterprise funds. So these are enterprise funds. The intent is that
Correct.
you understand how enterprise funds work. And I certainly have clients that will budget for depreciation for an enterprise fund. I have clients that don't, for the very reason that Laurie mentioned, that they just don't deem it as an outlay, kind of a cash outlay. But, I mean, I think it would seem to make sense, if you're able to budget for those
I
expenditures.
think too, when you're like a water district, a PUC oversees your rates, and so they're more demanding of that depreciation funding.
That is
Whereas in a
correct.
sewer, we're not regulated by the PUC, and so there is more local control over that.
I was just wondering if we should, somewhere along the way,
What does Chris think?
Think about
I
it.
didn't mean to cut you off, Chris.
No, that's correct, Mike. And I think that was going to be part of our discussion for tonight, was just, in the future, how we're going to meet those needs, because, again, we are starting to fall behind with that. So that is something that we need to address, and that's probably one of the avenues that we can look at to help meet that shortfall.
okay. And I got one more sorry, but I think this is educational too for the board.
absolutely.
So, on page 53. Okay. I was this is the retiree benefit, the retirees who have dependent insurance and so forth?
Yep.
Okay. So, It says our liability is $363,831. And I was trying to find that on the books. Is that somewhere on the books?
It is. So it would be on statement one,
Okay.
which is page 23.
All right, I just missed.
Mike, can you pull the microphone closer to you? We cannot hear you.
Okay, then I just missed that then.
Sorry.
I couldn't find it in the.
Sure.
What page?
Page 23, which is statement one.
Okay,
And it would be under due in more than 1 year, so that 11,422,000.
oh, that's why. I couldn't
Yeah,
find it.
it's very buried.
Yeah,
Exactly.
okay,
Kind of the bridge, there is, and I think you were highlighted it a few minutes ago, but the changes in long-term liabilities, which is on page 44, is kind of the bridge between the two.
okay. Yeah, I was on page 44. Okay,
So the 12,098,000 is the combination of the 812,000 and the 11,422.
all right. So explain to me then on 53, there's a thing up that it's in italics as well. It says, "No assets are accumulated in a trust that meets the criteria of paragraph 4 of GASB statement number 75, accounting and financial reporting for post-employment benefits other than pensions." Now, that implies to me that we're not doing something that we're supposed to do. Is that what that says?
No. No, I don't have any clients that have set up a trust for other post-employment benefits. I don't have one client that does it that way because, in all honesty, pension and OPEB are calculated by actuaries.
Yeah, I know.
And
So what you're saying is that we don't need to have a reserve?
I'm
or-
sure there's governments out there that do something like that to offset that liability, but as I said, I
We
don't have any
Okay.
clients that don't.
That's all I want to know, that
Yeah.
we're not in
You're
violation.
not deficient in some way.
Okay.
No, I
All
wouldn't
right.
say so.
All right, that's all I had. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Certainly.
Great audit.
Oh, thank you.
Great job.
Thank you, Casey.
Nice
Great.
job.
Thanks, folks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to have a motion to accept the audit.
Yes,
I make a motion, we accept the audit.
thank you.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Very good. Okay, next order of business, consider annual transfer to capital reserve fund balance. And I believe the amount is $468,000.
Nicole?
Yep, so in accordance with our fund balance policy, we recommend every year that the board will transfer some funds to our capital improvement fund from the general fund. It's money that's in excess of 18% of our budget, which is $468,351. And then in addition to that, with the current year's use of the $700,000, that will leave us with a balance of $1.1 million in that fund for future uses towards the capital improvements.
Excellent.
Why would we not do that?
Oh, we do it every year.
Okay,
Is that a motion, John?
that is indeed.
Okay, so
Okay.
all right, I have a motion and a second to move $468,000 into the capital reserve fund. All those in favor? Motion passes. Okay, now for the highlight of the evening, presentation of capital improvement plan. I know that's what you're all here for.
So, thank you, everyone. I want to thank you for your willingness to go through the capital improvement plan with us tonight. It's our first step in the budget process, and it's really an opportunity for the board to give us feedback. So, as you will hear tonight, there are many different needs in the community, both infrastructure, buildings, and equipment, and each department will give you a brief overview of them. You have our 5-year CIP plan in your packet, and this presentation is going to give you an overview of it. What is really important is for us to recognize the amount and the value of these assets that we have, and that planning is important in order for us to make good choices. And of course, this is a living document. It changes within the year and as we become aware of new items. So I'm going to turn it over to Nicole to start you off with the CIP. And we got a presentation that Dave's putting up.
Yep. So what is a capital improvement plan? So it's a financial planning tool that management uses that will list the capital projects and purchases, and it's one of the most important responsibilities that the government officials have. Ours is a 5-year plan. We identify, and each department coordinates and proposes what they have coming up for capital projects, their buildings, repair, replacement, construction, expansions of facilities, and what they foresee coming up for like their long-term goals to help get their departments going. So we sit down with the departments and go over what their priorities are, and we put it into this 5-year plan. And they will determine what, they determine which ones are important and their priority. And so we compile this list into a big spreadsheet. And then a variety of funding sources would be the operating budget, some reserve funds, bonding, trust funds, grants, and some other private sources. And right now, our 5-year CIP plan is just shy of $37.6 million.
Right. And so what's important is this is the capital improvement plan. This is not the capital improvement budget. They are two different documents. We will bring forward a budget to you with what we think for FY '24. But this is a 5-year plan of, this is what we're thinking we may need.
Of which 22 will be the first step. 23.
23.
So we're going to start with administration. So administration, records preservation is a big part of it, and I'm going to let Tracy give you her insight into that.
Brought some visual aids with me. So I would say that probably the least glamorous but most important part of being a town clerk is the records preservation. The records of the town show our history. It helps us in legal issues, property disputes, things like that. So it's really important that we have records that we can fall back on. So again, this year, we'll be asking for money for records preservation. So this is a book, the next book in line, actually. So as you can see, the pages are brittle. There's a lot of loose leaf things that have just been stapled or taped or even just stuck in. So this book is actually one of the newer ones. This one is from 1966 to 1971.
My birth must be
Which to some of us doesn't seem like that long ago, but what's that? So yeah, so this is what they look like. This one is actually in really good shape because it is one of the more recent books. We only have 3 more that look like this. So once they do their magic, they come back to us with these nice leather-bound books. They're in sleeves, so there's no loose leaf papers. They're in a book that you can take out pages if you need to make photocopies, whereas with that one, you'd have to try to lay it flat. So there's just, it's very important that we keep these.
Are those the original
Yes.
documents?
Yes.
Not copies of them?
Right, so what they do is they come and collect the books that look like that. They take out each sheet and they surface clean it. They de-acidified it. They mend it if there's any torn pages. And they do this all in a special lab that's all they do. They take out all of the adhesives like the old tape or anything that is non-archival. And then they put them in these acid-free sheets that will last forever. And then they put a nice little sticker that says when it was done and the company that did it, so if we ever have to refer back.
Is there also a copy made of it at the same time?
No, this is it. No.
So no redundancy?
No.
We're not digitizing at all?
We aren't yet. That's a whole other process. At some point, we might look at that, but The important thing is now to get these pages safe before they deteriorate any further.
Problem with digitization, Mike, is that what format do you use? You know, we all grew up with Beta and VHS tapes, but if somebody gave you one today, what would you stick it in?
But no, there,
And
I-
there's conversion files and everything else now that
They're
takes one
formats.
and they take one format and convert it to another and so forth. So that can be done. It's just time, it's time is what
It's
it
time
is.
we're going to have to spend.
Exactly.
again. So we've done this, and of course, those new pages will be much easier to digitize, to be sure. But have we looked at going straight? What's the downside of going straight to digital?
We haven't really looked at it. We've just been trying to keep all the books consistent and get up to date. And we're almost there. We only have a couple more to go
Oh,
in
is that
this
right?
series.
So,
But then we have, valuation books, and we have a whole bunch of other things and vital records. But for now, we're just trying to get the meeting records, because we have had to refer to them quite often to
How
help.
long does it take for one of those books to convert?
It takes about 3 months.
Okay.
So they take it away, they come pick it up, and then they send it back via FedEx. And
what's the
it's-
ballpark cost per book?
Well, with a $5,000 budget, we can usually do 2 a year.
2,500.
So, yeah, but, with increase in costs of everything, I'm not sure what. They come and they look at what we have to do, and they tell me what they can do, which books they can do for my $5,000 that I've been
I would
given.
hope when we move beyond this series, that we'll take a serious look at going straight to digital. I really think that's going to be an important use of the money. It's going to last a lot longer, these books, and it has the advantage of being able to be searchable. You can use character recognition, although a lot of this handwriting I know is going to be tough, but some of that wasn't, some of that was print. And that's going to be an important thing to have, in a searchable database format as time goes on, so.
And Tracy, do you know if any of these have ever been put on microfiche?
No, they
Huh?
haven't.
They haven't?
No, so far it's just been hard
Just that,
copies.
okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Any other questions? All right,
No,
well, thank
I think
you.
It's very important.
Yes.
And actually, we didn't start all that long ago, so it's good that. you
Right,
only
it
have a
started
few
with
months.
April, so it's, been within the last 15 or 20 years. So, yeah, she did a great job getting us started.
Thank you, Tracy.
You're welcome.
Okay.
So the other item in the capital improvement plan is the town hall construction. So this current year, the town funded engineering and design of a new town hall. We have a town hall building committee. In fact, we met today. And that building committee is trying to put a design that will give us an estimate of the cost on the village parcel site. So right now, we have a placeholder in of $4.5 million. The current timeline, if we go to the next slide, is that we're in that budget design and engineering, is that we will have a vote on the project in November of 2023. And then we would complete, if that was successful vote, we would complete the design by next summer, put it out to bid, and we would be moving into the town hall in probably more like summer, fall of 2025, if everything were to go according to plan. And of course, that ties in with the village fire station design and construction timeline, because this meeting room needs to be turned into offices for fire staff as well as bunk quarters, and the chief will talk about that. And so we need to have that new meeting room up and operational in order to move forward with this project. Does anyone have any questions? Werner, did you have anything to add to that?
The fire station's a separate budget, right? That'll be a different.
yes. Yep. It's down.
I can speak, I know you all are very familiar with our current facility that we have. I can, just a little bit of history to that piece. That building was purpose-built, as a town hall in 1959. Was when that was originally constructed. We currently have around 3,700 square feet, in terms of office space, that we use. And I know you all know your history in terms of, this building and this property. But I think it's important to, remember that, in in 1998, the town underwent, a similar study and process, and it determined in 98, under the select leadership of Margie Hollingsworth at that time, that building was obsolete at that point, 25 years ago. And there was, on this site, was also, besides the fire station, had been planned a little over 8,000 square foot new town hall building that would have been built, just further out into the parking lot. So, we had a lawsuit, and I won't go into the details regarding exactly all those details, but suffice it to say that was never built, but yet, obviously, we know the need remains. That need was identified then, and it still remains today, in terms of our facility needs, so.
Do you want to tell people what the price was back then?
Sure, yeah. So the town had voted and approved a bond of $1.6 million, for both buildings, at that time. So, that would have been a 20-year bond. So in other words, we would have paid that off 5 years ago. And we would have been in an 8,000 square foot building that ironically would probably be in front of you talking about, updates and renovating at this point, so.
2.5 times the space we have now.
Yeah, that's correct, yep. So. But yeah, so those are just a little bit of history and some current details in terms of
Werner's
where we're at.
Werner's our town hall historian.
Yeah, I feel like it now, right? But,
Thank you,
great,
Werner.
thank you.
Thanks, Werner.
So we're moving on to fire, and we have Chief Everett here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Chief.
So, on this side, just showing some of our bigger purchases. The engine being paid for, the $765,000 out of Kittredge money, so no taxpayer dollars. And then the ladder replacement at the 1.4 is what we already approved with reserve funding and the lease purchase that we did. We can go to the next one. So this is the rest of the 5-year plan. And you can see it goes hand in hand in FY '25 with the town hall being done, that we could start doing the renovation for here, because obviously this space is key for the fire department to move forward into what our next step is going to be. I can't tell you when, but it'll obviously be having per diem employees, and we need certain facilities to make that happen that we don't have now. And then it's just a replacement schedule of things like the chief's vehicle. Our air packs are coming to the end of their life in FY '27. And right now, that's looking like $336,000. But when Lori spoke about the living document, I constantly, every 6 months or so, am asking what pricing is now, so I can try to keep as current as we possibly can. But we all know how screwy the pricing has been on almost everything lately.
Have you assumed inflation numbers on these, or is this what it would be today?
It's what it would be today. The problem with that is everyone's having price increases more regularly. 5 years ago, the air packs would be, add 3% a year for how many years out you are, and you'd be there. But not anymore. They're having 2, 3, 4 price increases a year. So we can go to the next one. So this just shows the truck that is being replaced. We held on to it a little bit longer, just so we could try to realize some savings with buying the engine and the ladder together, which there was some. It wasn't a great amount of money, but this is also being paid for with this truck's being paid for with Kittredge money, so no taxpayer dollars. Go ahead to the next one.
Huge.
Yeah. If every 25 years the town gets a free fire truck, hooray for Kennebunkport.
Yeah,
It really is fabulous.
But we will need that on the town warrant to accept that.
Yes.
So I'm just making a note to my town clerk.
So this is the ladder that we'd be replacing, that right now is 23 years old, and by the time the new one gets here, it'll be knocking on the 25-year mark that we, NFPA talks about we shouldn't be using them anymore. This was originally bought with Kittredge money, but now we took what we had in reserve because, thankfully every year you guys have been putting money in our apparatus account every year, so it makes it a little less painful than having to just come up with the 1.4 million we're spending for this truck now. So we we leased purchase for 5 years, $487,000 at a price of $108,000 a year, in that ballpark. Go to the next one. So annually, we buy turnout gear, and we have a rotation based on our number of people that are interior qualified, so that every 10 years, the interior people aren't using gear that's more than 10 years old. Then I recycle it to use for someone that's non-interior. Depending on how active they are, we can get anywhere from 5 to 10 more years out of it. Go ahead for the next one. So this, like I talked about, this is what we're looking at right now in 27, which is this year is year 5 out of an 8-year plan by putting a little bit of money aside every year to be able to make that purchase a little less painful. It's got to go up this year because of the price increases of the product. Yep. The next one. So then in it too, we have the 120,000 to come up with the plan of what we could do here for the stations for our upcoming needs, which again would be going to the per diem route. We're still doing pretty well. So like I said, we're smart to be preparing for it, but it's not imminent that we have to necessarily push that button. But it is a different quarters, different things need to happen in order to make that happen in this building. Go ahead. And then this last one is we did hire an architect to come up with what the square footage we would possibly need and how we could do it to this building. So if you're looking at the yellow areas are new construction, which would be adding on to this meeting room towards the parking lot for the bunk rooms, going off the back a little bit to change the training room, which we use this as our training room. So we'd have a training room at the back of the station and another bay. As we work forward to going to what most likely will be a 2-station system. So that's what the extra bay is for, because I'd be taking vehicles from 2 other stations to combine them and get them under cover in a station. So, and I think. So this is similar to what Lori had talked about with the town hall design, is how we're going to get there. So the budget, the design and engineering this year, beginning this construction in FY25 and having it completed in the spring of 2026.
And that was a 1.5 million estimate at this point.
Right, and yeah, it's not going to be. It's pin the tail on the donkey, you know. But that's what I have. If there are any questions? All right, cool.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's Stephanie.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me now? Good?
You're excellent.
Okay. So Parks and Recreation, as far as our plan goes, you can see from the summary here that for the next 3 years, we have earmarked some money for the park amenities, which will come from our master plan that we're currently working on. We're setting aside money for those 3 years because we know that we're going to have some new things happening. More about the master plan. We are in the survey phase still, and we'll soon begin with the stakeholder meetings and hopefully get that plan completed by May. So 3-phase approach is what we're taking once we have that planned. So for the next 3 fiscal years, we do have money set aside in the capital plan here.
And we're really focused on Firefighters Park and Parsons.
Yes, Firefighters Park and Parsons Field are the 2 main areas that we're looking at with the plan.
I have a question,
Mhm.
and it's just came up, somebody asked me this.
Sure.
Does the town own Parsons Field, that's right near the consolidated.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
And it's RSU 21 owns the school.
Correct.
So it.
Yeah, the field itself is the town's, yes. Okay, so then also on the summary, you'll see that we have in fiscal year '25, $75,000 earmarked for a bus replacement. So the bus is 2015, so at that point it will be 10 years old. We have the mechanic looking at it currently just to see what kind of condition it is in. A lot of times if it is in good condition, we might be able to get another year out of it, but we know that we're going to need to replace that soon. And then also in fiscal year '25, based on the committee for the, looking for space for a public boat launch, we have put aside some money in the Parks and Recreation Capital Plan for that as well. And then looking out into fiscal year '27, we have set aside some money for the village parcel trails. That will be after the town hall is built, some trails to kind of go along with that. Does anybody have any questions?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So next in your lineup is our pier or our waterfront reserve fund. So because we are looking to redo the entire Cape Porpoise Pier with our EDA grant in the next year, that funding will really take care of all our needs at the pier except for hoist replacements. So in the next few years, really just continuing to replace hoists are what's on our timeline.
Okay.
Chief?
Good evening, everybody. So my long-term plan, we've got a few projects. The next slide, please. The first project in place is we've got to replace the server for our in-car camera systems. It records all of our traffic stops, responses to emergency situations. They also have a mic pack on the officers, and it records all our interactions with, most interactions with the public. And it's all stored digitally, and this system is original, and it's not going to be compatible any longer, so I've got to replace it, and it's not cheap, but the server and the video is very important to us, so it's an important replacement that I need to take care of.
How is that done? Do you have to plug it in when you come back, or does it do it real time?
It automatically downloads when you drive into the parking lot, sir.
Oh, wow.
I'll be done.
I installed the antenna myself to save money. Save money. The next slide, please. We've got to repair some eaves at the police department and also in the nurse's office. Those eaves are rotting, and if I don't get that taken care of, it's going to, get into the roofing system in the walls. So to protect the police department and the nurse's office, that's got to be taken care of. Next slide, please. I've got to, this big 55-gallon drum is a sewerage grinder that takes the waste from the nurse's office, grinds it up, and injects it into my sewer system at the police department. It has malfunctioned twice, and the deputy chief and I have cleaned up the material, so we do it all. The last time it was looked at, they suggested that we get it fixed and replaced. Not just fixed, but replaced. So that's what that's all about. Next slide, please. And we have the ongoing issue with cruisers that never ends with us, that we have to replace. I got to let you know that it was a nightmare. You all folks know about cars because of COVID and things of that nature. So I got an estimate for a hybrid that Ford put out last year to be delivered this year. It was $50,000, and the dealership said plan to pay another $4 or $5 grand for that. They just don't know. So even delivery. So to try to get you an honest answer on a hybrid cruiser that obviously looking forward into the future, it's very tough to put a price tag on that. So, and also in the future, next year or so, I bumped that out a year. We've got to replace all the sidearms for all the police officers because they're past their normal life. So, any questions? Yeah.
Hmm?
Sir. On the hybrid cruiser, what's the
Can you come to the microphone, please? The folks at home can't.
Sure.
Yeah. If you just state your name and ask.
Yeah,
your question.
Alan Evelyn, I'm on the budget board. With the hybrid cruiser, what is the projected range of a charge? How many miles?
So I guess it depends on the vehicles and the model, but the last time I looked at them, it was about 250 miles.
Yeah, it made, is it a hybrid or is it a?
You
is
said
it
a
plug-in
hybrid.
hybrid?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Is
Yeah.
it a full hybrid? I mean, is it a plug-in hybrid or just?
It's just a
a gas
hybrid.
So
I'm sorry, I was
the-
thinking
Yeah,
back
got
to
it.
the
Got it.
the electric
answer
vehicles
is
that
they go-
I did everything for,
Yeah.
so.
They
So,
go as long as they have gas in them, because
Yeah.
when there's no battery, I'm not exactly sure, but it's a combination
It's a
of
battery
both.
assist to a
Yeah,
gasoline car.
I use the
Okay.
energy from the brakes to charge the batteries.
Oh, okay, all right, so it's not a plug-in hybrid?
It's not a plug-in
no.
hybrid.
Because Ford has that, and the range of, the new ones, the wagons, are about 60 miles
For the plug-in hybrid.
on the plug-in hybrid.
Right.
It's like double what it was the first one.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so this one, so what is is there a projected savings by utilizing this early technology?
So the hybrid, when I did it.
Can you make sure you guys are using the mic?
So when I originally looked at the hybrid, Ford has a breakdown on their website, and it was about $11,000 savings in gas that projected over the life of the cruiser that I predicted back then with the costs back then.
Okay.
Thank you. Any questions, folks?
No.
No, thank you, Chief. Thank you very much. Okay, Public Works. Let's see, Chris coming back to the microphone.
Hi, folks.
Hey, Chris.
So this first slide is just an overview of the next 3 years, FY '24, '25, and '26. And I'll speak to these items in the coming slides. Next slide, please. So for road improvements for fiscal year '24 through '26, this is what we were looking at doing. Basically, we wanted to start on the Walls District project and take care of the drainage and overlay that what we had base paved this year. FY '25, we'd be looking at the next phase of the project for Walls District Road, which is to reclaim and base pave the road. And then in FY '26, get to some of the outlying roads that need to be addressed.
That 966 is spread out over 3 years.
So the 966 is just FY '24.
Oh,
Yeah, see, this is where I have trouble with the format, and
Yeah.
I see where John's coming from. I don't know why we don't put like items on the same line so that, this isn't with you, Chris, this is
Well,
the
there's referring
format
to
in general.
structure roads. I'm
He looks
sorry.
down
I got- now
below.
I got it. Okay.
Instead of putting them together, we put them split down. So
Sure.
it would be really neat if we could look at reconstruct roads or buy a fire truck or whatever it is, whoever is doing it.
Okay.
And all on the same line. you
Sure.
know, Like things on the same line.
Okay.
It would just, no, I'm just, that's up to Nicole and Lori. But I'm not, this is not a criticism, I'm just saying.
Sure.
I got confused
point
the
of
same way.
Yep.
Point of confusion, that's all.
Okay.
I think we're on different pages. Because
Public
I'm
Works?
looking down and looking at yours, and it's a line across, and mine's what's on
No,
the
it's a
slide.
page before that. I think that's.
Oh, is that it?
slide- Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the one I was looking at. I had
So
moved
anyway.
the slide yet.
I had the same thing as John, every time.
Oh, I
it
see what
is-
you mean now.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's fair.
Anyway,
Cool,
cool.
Okay.
thanks.
Next slide, please. So this is our 2012 International. This is a truck that we need to replace next. You know, as with a lot of the trucks, it usually seems to be the corrosion that gets them. This is no different. We were having experienced some corrosion on the frame with this truck. Another unique problem that this truck has is a fuel knock. We think this might have been related to several years ago. A vendor actually filled our diesel tank with gasoline.
Doesn't work,
And,
doesn't work well.
It doesn't work well, and this truck unfortunately was one of the victims in that. So we anticipate that, you know, the longer we keep this truck, we're going to end up putting some serious money into it.
Damages it.
Price, does that include the sander or no?
Yes, yep, that'll be completely outfitted with the plow, the wing plow, the sander. Yes, yep. And then the other unique problem that this truck has is it has a different style sander unit in it and a control head, which has been problematic. We've already had to fix it twice, and we're only at the start of the season. And it's a difficult unit to get parts for because a lot of people, vendors, realized early on that this is a problematic unit, and so of course they're not sourcing parts for it. The next slide, please. This is our 2006 Ford F-350. So this truck has seen 3 Public Works directors. And it is also succumbing to rust. It will not take a sticker again this coming year. The mechanic has done his best to kind of stave off everything that he was able to, but this truck is beyond putting money into at this point. Next slide, please. So this is our John Deere loader. The tires right now are currently in a position where they're probably going to get us through the rest of this winter and next summer. However, we're going to have to replace the tires on it. The tires that we're looking to put on it are more of a snow tread design, something that's going to be a little bit more effective in the winter when we're using this for snow removal. Tires for these are extremely expensive. That's why you see the $18,000 price tag. So this is what we're going to be expecting to pay for those tires, replacement tires.
That's just the rubber, that's not the wheel. You put it on the same wheel.
That's correct. Yep, that is just a rubber.
18K.
Yep.
4.5K a tire.
Yes, yep.
That's some serious rubber.
We could do 1 tire a year, maybe.
So when we get kind of stuck. Oh.
Yeah, right.
Next slide, please. This is just a glance into the future years, FY27, FY28, and beyond. And at this time, this is kind of what we see for a replacement schedule for those years. Obviously, some of that stuff may be subject to change based on, condition of equipment, stuff comes up, roads change, et cetera. So it's kind of a fluid point in this plan for us. The next slide, please. Again, so this is, what we were anticipating for fiscal year 27 and 28. The paving plan for us is kind of a fluid plan. Needs change in town. We experience perhaps damage on a certain road. So, in hopes of trying to prioritize what needs to be done first, we're obviously looking at which roads, experience the most traffic, and we may adjust that list based on those needs. Next slide, please. So this is just an overview of the special projects. These are projects that either have come up that we're working on, or other projects that kind of need to be on our radar. And I'll speak to these in the coming slides. Next slide, please. So for those of you that are familiar with Government Wharf, the beach landing, so when you pull in Josiah Curtis Lane at the very end on the left-hand side, a lot of people use this to access kind of the beach area there. We did have a request to go down and take a look at this to see if we could do anything to improve access to the beach there. Right now, we kind of have the large rocks that are there. The pavement was paved kind of down, partially down over the rocks, but it's problematic really for anybody to access that area. So a request was
In
made.
this picture, it looks kind of like a ramp, but it's really a drop-off.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it's not real clear in the picture, but it does drop off. So we were asked to look at that and see what we can do, and likely what makes the most sense at this point would be aluminum landing and stairs, something that we can, anchor to the pavement, but if we're going to get a storm, we can remove them ahead of the storm so that we don't lose them. So, next slide, please. So the Pier Road reconstruction and sidewalks, I think at this point, everybody's intimately familiar with this. We've already had several hearings on this. And certainly, you're all familiar with where we are in the process. And right now, we're working toward finalizing a design. Next slide, please.
You want to play that? This is just video we had taken on the December 23rd storm.
10 or 15 minutes before high tide, you can see that the water's about the top of the guardrails on the causeway, right close to the bottom of the sign on the foam pole there. And on shore, it's reached the pillars of this gate.
Thanks, Dave.
So that was just video that our new pier manager shot, right? Well, he was down there.
Yep, our harbor master pier manager.
Yep. Another thing that we need to start preparing for, our current contract with Casella expires in August of 2024. So we're going to have to be putting that out to bid sometime soon. With that comes the need for us to look at automated pickup. Casella did tell us that they are going to automated pickup for a number of different reasons. One obviously being safety, not having to have somebody ride around on the back of the truck. Certainly money. It's a business like anything else, and the numbers have to work. So we are looking at purchasing, bins. We're going to need one for recycling and one for trash for each resident. So we're looking at approximately 6,200 bins at a cost of $310,000. Next slide.
The assumption is they're picking up, the truck has both recycling and trash on it. The same
Well,
truck?
no, so that's one of the things I had wanted to meet with you on that, yeah. Yeah, there's some other newer,
Because then we can go to weekly recycling, which I think would, so we'll talk about that.
yeah, there's some other nuances that go along with it as well. And next slide, please. Streetlight fixtures. So right now, the town owns approximately 105 streetlight fixtures. As much as everybody likes them, unfortunately, there are no replacement parts available for them because they are so old at this point. The fixture that you see here is the fixture that the lighting committee is going to, be recommending. These are at a cost of about $2,300 a piece. That's installed, so that's the price of the fixture, plus, the labor and material to install it. So we're looking at a cost of about $250,000 to replace those. Next slide, please.
Chris, is that something that they would do on a maintenance schedule, or do you think they would just say, okay, we're going to expend this money and then we're going to just go down the street and replace them
Yeah.
all at once?
Yeah, so, obviously, this is something that the contractor would have to work into his schedule, and I think it would be up to us to decide how many maybe we wanted to do in a given year as well. It's one gentleman that maintains our streetlights, so it will be a work in progress to get them all done.
But that's the money as of today that we expect would cover all of those
As of
lateral
today,
lights.
yes, yep. Next slide, please. So this is another area that, it has come to our attention in past storms, but definitely more so in the December 23rd storm. The picture on the left is the culvert that is down on the beach in front of Walker's Point. Typically, well, this culvert does run across Ocean Avenue to the marsh on the other side. This culvert allows water to flow back and forth between both. The issue is that when we have a storm like this, a lot of rock gets deposited, and it basically plugs the end of this culvert. Highway crew has to go down and kind of fish around for it. The last time that we went down to dig this out and unplug it, the operator noticed that the joint was leaking because the water is obviously under pressure trying to get back to the other side. He wasn't able to fully unblock it, and we had to pull one piece of that culvert out, one whole stick of that out. I don't have another picture up here, but the entire bottom of the culvert is completely rotted out, and the next one that we can see is similar. The base of the culvert's rotted out. So this is something that we are going to do a temporary fix on for now, but this is something that we need to start looking at. I don't know what that design is. That's something that we'd have to have looked at by an engineer, but Certainly, if we replace it in like kind, it's still quite an undertaking, and it's still one of those issues that we need to get resolved.
This would be replaced with PVC, though. I'm sorry.
Or it could be a concrete box culvert too.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's something that we would want to have designed to make sure we're putting in the right product. Obviously, on the other side of the point is Wamby Beach. The picture on the right doesn't really do justice to the damage that was done down there. That was after
That's after we cleaned it up.
Right, after we cleaned it up. We actually lost a lot of material on the marsh side that we're not going to be able to grab back. I think we need to look at armoring that section of the road and possibly bringing that up as well at some point. So, next slide, please. So to go along with, the Pier Road project, obviously, the head of the harbor is something else that we need to start looking at. I think in the next few slides, we also have some more pictures of the flooding from the December 23rd storm. There we go. So that's just a video of what we saw that day.
This was taken by Mike Weston, wasn't it?
Janet.
Janet Weston.
Credit where credit's due.
And yet another area in town that we need to look at, the next slide, please, is Dock Square. So this is a picture of Dock Square during that storm and the municipal parking lot. So these are all projects that we need to have on our radar and start considering. And next slide, please. Oh, we're on wastewater. So, the idea of this is just that we realize we have a lot of areas in town that probably are going to have to be addressed at some point. As with anything else, there's only so much money. And, we'll have to decide in the coming years, how we structure that. But these are all areas in town that we feel we need to look at strongly.
Well, maybe as we go forward, there might be some grant money.
Yes. Yeah, and we'll explore that. Yep.
Thank you,
Any
Chris.
questions?
Yes, thanks.
Do you want to move the mic? Thank you.
Yep. I won't push it over either. Well, thanks, everybody. I just, as a start, I just want to make sure that in 2019, we did a fiscal sustainability plan for the treatment plant and the assets around the plant. And a typical asset for wastewater asset is typically about a 30-year. The electronics and such may be only at 10 years or so, but just to put you in a frame of mind of that most of the assets that we have in our wastewater system currently are beyond their life expectancy. So we're currently in a mode where we're really looking at the consequence of the failure of the individual assets should they fail. And so what we're recommending here, and this is really the what we feel the next critical pieces or Achilles heels are for us. And so I'll just walk through those very quickly. Next slide, please. So we basically have 16 major pump stations throughout the town. We have a treatment plant, 16 major pump stations, about 88 individual pump stations that were put in for individual residences with DEP grant funds in the late 70s, early 1980s. The most recent pump station that was replaced was Green and Chicks, and that was done in 2018. So that was the last round of major pump stations that we reconstructed. Here you just have a picture of what the new pump stations may look like versus the older pump stations. The one on the left is actually Ocean, which is one of the pump stations we're recommending. And the newer ones are actually Chicks and Green, would be reflecting the ones that are on the right. Next slide, please. One of the Achilles heel that we feel we have at the plant basically has 4 brains, if you will, or PLCs, which are programmable logic controllers. Basically, it's basically they're computers that we program and we tell them what to do, what to monitor and when to kick pumps on, off, things like that. So there are 4 of those within the plant, 3 of which are basically either no longer supported or beyond their life. Should we get to a point where we would, those units would go down, would have to go immediately to a 24/7 operation. So we'd have operators there monitoring things and actually turning on pumps. So very critical. As I mentioned, there are 4 of those in the plant. We would like to try to begin replacing those. They're well beyond their 10-year life at this point. So that is one of our Achilles.
Is that $170,000 for all 4, or is that
Yeah,
for one?
yeah, the SCADA system is also, so SCADA system, they all speak to each other. So the communications back to us, really all the PLCs go back to the SCADA system, then we can monitor and remotely monitor and take appropriate action remotely as well. So we were going to upgrade just the SCADA system, and as we started to delve into, all right, what's everything else looking like, we found the PLCs were actually a critical piece, which we have to integrate those softwares together.
I would think, they must be different brands, certainly they'd be different vintages of capability.
Yeah, they do, but the integration has to happen, so not to bore you with the inputs and outputs, but all the inputs and outputs from the PLCs have to go to the SCADA system, so that we call it integration, that we all have to connect all the dots, if you will, of all the communications that are going back and forth. So to do one, we would have to go and change out a PLC later on, we'd have to go back to the SCADA system and upgrade and change that integration as well. So we felt that there are efficiencies in certainly doing both at the same time.
Makes sense.
Eric, as you know, we got caught as a town with our pants down on the wastewater treatment plant, trying to do a lot of stuff to catch up.
Yes.
Have you and your staff, have you now are you in the process, or maybe you've already done it, set up now that we're getting ourselves to where we want? Have we got some kind of a document that says rolling, we got to do this in 5 years, we got to do this in 6
Yes.
years, and so that, do we?
So the fiscal sustainability plan that I referred back to basically evaluates all those assets. We probably got a little more granular. They may not have gotten this granular with the PLCs and the SCADA systems. But that was when I brought other instrumentation engineers in to kind of evaluate what we had. It kind of came out of that. But the sustainability plan basically tells us, what the life is. So it does a risk analysis. It says basically what's the likelihood of failure, what's the consequence of the failure. At this point, because most of the equipment has really gone beyond its age, its likelihood of failure is probably at the top.
But the new stuff we're putting in and so forth.
Sure.
Will we be doing something that says, hey, look, 5 years, I don't know what it is.
That
but
would be
6
reset to probably a 30, the stuff that we're doing right now would be probably a 30-year life.
All right.
So we're resetting the clock for that equipment.
But we would try to do I know you would, try to do something every year so that we don't end up with a $6.5 million or $7 million.
Well, and certainly that's going to be a challenge. We're certainly a little, I'd say we're a little bit behind in our infrastructure reinvestment.
Yeah, I know.
So it's really, that's one of those decisions and one of those discussions we need to have. I certainly want to make sure that we shed proper light on what's really the critical.
Critical, yeah.
But we're not waiting for something to fail before we replace it. I mean, we have a plan that says we'd like to get these things replaced because they have a high probability of failing.
Right. Yes, and that's.
I think what Eric would describe is the things in his FY24 operating CIP are items that, if they failed, we could not work
We're in
around.
trouble, yeah.
And so those are the most vulnerable. But as he said, we've got 16 pump stations, and we've only chipped away at them.
Yeah.
And so at 1.4 million apiece, you can see a bond is coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, so right now, Chicks and Green are the only 2 pump stations that we've done in town out of 16. So in this round that we're in right now, we're looking to begin construction on 3 new ones right now in this calendar year. So we'll begin looking at the next, if you will, to try to spread these out over time. We're not doing them every year, but, maybe every 2-3 years, we should be thinking about which one should we replace next. Next slide, please. So
No, there's a so this is the, one of the PLCs that I was referring to. It's a control panel effectively, and you see the small screen that is in the front. That's our PLC right there. It's not much to look at, but that's what happens behind the screen there. That's basically all the electronics that are there, the kind of the brains behind the screen. Next slide, please. Sorry, I'm kind of boring, aren't I? So
No, it's not. No, it's not.
That's a good stuff.
yeah.
I love mixing tanks and
Yeah,
stuff.
the aeration tanks. So what you're looking at right there is our anoxic zone of our aeration tanks. And we've, in this current fiscal year, we've ordered the mixers. You folks have approved us buying new mixers. The mixers were just long overdue, and they're starting to get noisy, and we know that they're getting close to failing. So we've got 2 bridges that we need to build to be able to set these mixers on. So we're just allocating some money to just get those bridges up so that we can actually size up the mixer shaft. So they have to be they have to be pretty accurate as to the height and how far they go down. So I've got to get that design done and then get those bridges purchased and installed. And next slide, please. And the rest of this is really the outlook that we're looking at right now. So I'll leave it to any questions you folks might have.
Oh, good job.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
So, you did away with my, so as you can see, we have FY '24, total is 7.9 million, so you can see it by departments. Although fire, we've talked about the reserve funds and the Kittredge funds there, the trust funds. Special projects includes the Pier Road, which is a $2.5 million grant. So if we go to the next slide, you can see the funding source for FY '24. So there's our grant of 2.5 million, our reserves, and our trust fund. So, I mean, the takeaway is still we have operating budget, including wastewater right now, of 3.7 million. And we normally have been funding capital at $1.5 million to 2 million a year. So,
It's a 2X.
well, I couldn't do everything in the CIP plan for FY '24 without drastically impacting the budget. And that's where we go to you and say, so what are our priorities, or how do we want to handle this? The same thing with FY '24 to '28. If we look at it by type, you can see those resiliency projects and road projects and special projects, as well as wastewater, is over half of the budget right there. And it's hard to imagine that we would fund everything there without some bonding, or prolonging, and certainly looking at grant funds, et cetera. If we go to the last slide, we're estimating what we might think potential grant funds are, as well as budget. So these are estimates because we don't know what opportunities they're going to be over the next 5 years, but you can see that there's a substantial impact on bonding and budget right now.
Quite a lot of money.
So this is where we turn it over to you and
It's a big
look to your feedback. Okay.
Well, does the board have any comment?
I need some time to digest.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think what would be helpful is to see what bonds we're going to be retiring.
So I have that right here for you.
Oh, perfect.
So these are 2 pages, because as you'll remember, we have a balloon payment on our village parcel bond. So the first page is, there's 2, so it's just go.
Hand them down, please.
How many more do we need?
Thank you.
I think that's,
They don't want with handwriting. So that would be-
This is the same,
those are all the same.
yeah, these are all the same.
That's your second page.
No, these aren't the same. Oh.
Right, you should have one that has the listing of the years in which the bond debt is retired. And the second one is if we took the balloon payment and amortized it out over 15 more years.
Yep,
Got it.
Okay?
we're good.
So the first is showing you, and what I put in pencil here next to it, so FY '24, the year we're getting ready to budget for, we have $1 million wastewater bond maturing. So just to give you a sense, if we're looking at a $5 million bond and we're retiring a $1 million bond, it's not going to be apples to apples. But right now, we're paying about $59,000 a year on that. And our police building bond will be coming up in FY '27. We're paying about $45,000 a year on that. And then the Parks and Rec building will be maturing in fiscal year '28. And that will be about $55,000 a year payment.
We got
So,
a couple $1 million worth of bonds that were
Yeah.
original,
Yeah.
that will be retiring in the next.
and so you can see in this first sheet, the principal and interest outset, and then it changes over time, certainly, but until we get out to those future years, we're not going to see a big difference in it.
So we're paying 59K on $1 million right now, huh?
Yep.
And if, between now and '28, if we had $17 million in bonds, a rough estimate, I think, says we're paying over $1 million on that if we were carrying them all.
The interest would be different for sure.
Because they're a larger bond.
No, because interest rates have gone up.
Ah.
I assume that the bond market has also increased its interest rates as the,
New bonds.
Well,
Fed rates.
Nicole and I met with Joe Katera, our bond financial advisor, I don't know, 2 months ago? And so, we are still doing, tax exempt bonds, keep in mind, but certainly short-term is better than long-term, but he still didn't have interest rates that would shock you, I would say. I think we're talking about a percentage, 100 basis points up.
yeah.
But it's still, and it's a ways out, but that's,
But when we sell them, of course, it's what the market will purchase that day.
yeah.
All right, I'm sure we'll be seeing this again.
I'm
I
sure.
don't have any major.
All right, so let's move on to number 8. We have some good news here. Number 8 is to accept donations towards the emergency fuel fund. We have a $500 donation from Richard Driver. We have $700 from Kennebunkport Residents Association, $1,000 from an anonymous donor, $2,000 from Atlantic Hall, $5,000 from the William J.J. Gordon Foundation, and, well, that's all of number 8.
Number 8.
Yes, the others separate.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay.
Second, much appreciation.
Yeah, absolutely. All those in favor? Thank you very much.
Well,
Motion
with
passes.
heating prices the way they are, we're gonna need it all.
Exactly. Number 9 would be to accept $500 from $50 from Barbara Cameron and the Madonna Chapter 144 towards the Emergency Food Fund.
So moved.
Second.
Second?
All those in favor?
Grateful.
So moved. Motion passes. Number 10, accept a $700 donation from the Kennebunkport Residents Association towards the general nurse's account.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Motion passes.
With much appreciation to
Absolutely.
everyone.
Absolutely. Other business, Mike,
Have nothing.
John,
Nothing, thank you.
Alan,
No, no, thank you.
Nothing.
Sheila, Lori,
I have nothing.
and I have nothing. Wow, go figure. Okay, number 12, move the warrants, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? And everybody's favorite, number 13, adjournment?
Move to adjourn.
Yeah.
So moved.
No, second.
Oh,
I need a second.
oh, second. That's why you were.
All right, I have a first and a second, and they're packing up down there. All those in favor? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
That's, yeah, that's why I was, me too. That's why I was holding on to these.